Thinking of investing, working, or starting a business in the cannabis industry? We've got you covered right here on Plant Problems. Hosted by Tony Frischknecht, Plant Problems takes a different approach to cannabis than what you're seeing and hearing from the mainstream media. Come along with Tony and be in the know about how to invest, work, or start a cannabis business. Let's get the show started with your host, Tony Frischknecht.
Hey everyone, this is Tony Frischknecht. Before we go into our next episode, we were experiencing a little technical sound issue on the guest side, so I just want to let you guys be aware, and we do apologize for that, but I think there was some valuable information in the episode, so I still wanted to publish it for you guys. So thanks so much for understanding, okay? And I look forward to sharing the show with you. Hey everyone, and welcome to Plant Problems. Thank you so much for coming back, guys. I love to at least bring more great information for you every time I do an episode, and I have a feeling I'm going to have some new stuff here for you on this episode. Before I get started with my next guest, I'd like to share a little bit with you the challenges of licensing. And some of you may be in that state right now where there's some roadblocks that are jumping out in front of you and making it hard for you to gain a license or next to impossible. And when we started out back in 2010 with our dispensary, they didn't even have a licensing program. It was more of it was quiet around the city. We had a small little permit we purchased. It was called a husbandry license. And it was the very first thing that any of us at that time had towards licensing. So fast forward a couple more years, as the city and state were putting a licensing program together, we were actually functioning as a dispensary without a fully fledged license. Now, of course we got one, but this took over 3 years to obtain. And it's rather frustrating because when you have that much time and that span, you don't really know if you're going to be in business or not at the end of the day. You're going to have this situation where it's like, oh, today could be the day we're out of business because we don't get our license approved. And I know so many people that went through the same thing we did. And I want to share with you that, you know, this has happened in every state. California's definitely had their struggles, but this has happened throughout the U.S. right now. And so today I'm bringing on a guest from Field State, David Melnick. He is joining us, and I've got some interesting questions to ask him. David, how are you doing today?
Good. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Hey, David, can you share with the listeners a little bit about you and what you're working on?
For sure. So I, like you said, my company name is Field State, and we started back in 2019. It's a small group of us based in Missouri, and we set out kind of, with the Missouri application in mind, trying to go for some dispensary licenses. So we're truly on the dispensary side, not messing around with cultivation or manufacturing or anything, outside of our core focus. And my personal background is one of my partners and I actually started a business together when we were in college. It was a cookie delivery business called Hotbox Cookies. So yes, the name is like
awesome.
It's a little forward thinking back in 2008, but we did that when we were both full-time students. We had another partner with us at that time. I exited upon graduating from college. He actually stayed on for many years, grew it to 4 locations, had a manufacturing facility, made it a pretty big success. I went and worked in financial services for a few years, and then commercial real estate on the finance side. And we actually got back together in 2018 at another cannabis company in Missouri, worked there for a year, and then ultimately decided, it made sense to kind of split off from them. They were more the traditional, vertically integrated model. We wanted to focus purely on one aspect of it. And so that's where Field State came in.
So David, you had some successes, and now you've transitioned into Field State. Mm-hmm. So share with me what Field State's about and what you guys are working on currently.
For sure. So, our big thing is that we want to promote localized ownership. So our primary business model isn't so much us owning the dispensaries ourselves, but we want to work with independently owned and operated, Field State branded dispensaries, and really help the small business entrepreneur compete with some of the larger players that are, unfortunately have the ability to come in and gobble up market share. And, it's a tough market out there. And what we've uncovered is, especially in Missouri, there's a lot of people who have licenses that are realizing how challenging it is to open up one of these businesses. And we don't want to see them, ultimately fail. Everyone in the cannabis industry is more or less a startup. We're a startup. The odds of us succeeding are not great. But we want to help mitigate, where there is potential risk for these individual business owners and provide them with the necessary strategic, operational, and branding support to really give them a fighting chance to have, a shot at being successful. When you look at, new medical markets, your customer base in terms of patients is relatively small. It's, in Missouri, it's, probably going to be 60,000 people. So how do you generate enough value and connection with those consumers and the patients to really stand out from, what will be a crowded field?
What's the major challenge that you feel the young operators or small operators have to make their mark, to get noticed?
Well, first of all, I think it's really, really challenging just to get one of these businesses open. And what we've seen in Missouri is a lot of people are still under the, vertically integrated model is the best. We are completely against that business philosophy. Seeing how the different businesses work, they're so drastically different. If you're coming into this for the first time, having a narrow focus and really doing one thing well is gonna, give you a better shot at success in trying to spread yourself too thin across the different businesses. Now, some may say you're diversifying if you're vertically integrated, so if one fails, the other. But it's really, really tough. It takes a lot of resources to become a cultivator or a manufacturer. And there's so many products out there. Like, just getting going, I think understanding what it entails to actually operate these businesses is what we see as kind of the biggest struggle as most people getting to market.
Do you find that there are a lot of people when you're talking, when they're saying, I'm starting a grow and I'm also starting a dispensary, do they realize that they're starting 2 businesses at the same time?
I don't think so. And it's even, you can take that to another level. If you're starting a grow and you're trying to brand or you're going to grow 10 different strains, essentially it's 10 different product brands that you're growing as well. I mean, each thing is different. How do you, it's pretty crazy. I don't know if, yeah. So, when we see people, going the full vertical, I don't really know if they understand as, multiple businesses that they're trying to run. it's definitely a challenge. It's interesting to see. So, some people are actually starting multiple brands, which is even more challenging. And then some people are combining all their brands under one, which is a very risky proposition. If you're a new cultivator or a new manufacturer and you're on the dispensary side, a misstep here or there could, kind of jeopardize everything. It's just interesting to watch. And, we've tried to share some missteps that we've encountered in the past and seen to help, these new people coming on. But, time will tell if people will listen to us. I think it's, a lot of people don't take us too seriously. Just, being young and not having any real operating businesses. They're like, you're just coming up with theory, and, and essentially that's true. But you start seeing the bigger players, the MedMens, the acreages, and, they're having struggles, and they've gone the traditional route. They were backed by big capital. It's, no one's immune to what's going on and how hard it is to actually get these things up and running.
What are some of the stories are on your journey with Field State have you guys struggled with?
So one, we didn't get any licenses we applied for, and that was a huge shock to us.
How many did you apply for?
We applied for 5. So okay. I can step back and just, give a brief overview of what's going on in Missouri.
Sure.
So for 2,400 roughly applications across the cultivation, manufacturing, dispensary, transportation, security, seed to sale, all the jazz. The only real competitive ones were cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensary. And so, they awarded those licenses at the end of 2019 and the beginning of 2020. We did not get any of our dispensaries, and now there are 1,200 different appeals in process for, basically it's a court case against the state saying that, there are improprieties or, the rules weren't followed, or people acted outside their boundaries, or their conflicts of interest. So, we're in line there, and,
So David, how did you hear about it?
So we just got an email notice saying your application had been denied. Then a little later, the scores came out, and, we weren't, it was very interesting to see where we scored, and then, the details behind our score. So they had a point system of 0, which was like, basically didn't answer the question. And then 4, 7, and 10 being, you answered really well. And for some reason, we had a lot of 0s, even though we answered every single question. And they were all answered, in our opinion, pretty well, at least at the 10 level. So it'll be interesting to see what actually happened. We weren't really focused so much on the scoring and, trying to make a big deal out of, us being treated unfairly or anything along those lines. It's, okay, so we got dealt the cards we got dealt. How do we continue working to build what we're ultimately going for, and that's helping other business owners? So
I have to ask you this, because there's a lot of different emotions that are happening during this process.
Yeah.
So when you found out about it, how pissed off were you guys about it?
We were pretty upset, but we immediately got on our computer, found out who won, started contacting them, and realized, there's opportunity out here. And, there's a difference between writing a good application and being able to implement that good application. So I think where we kind of felt slighted was we wrote a good application, we have the ability to implement it. There's quite a few people that, had someone write their application and now are struggling to implement. And that's common across all states. I don't want to single out people in Missouri. That's just how it is, and kind of these, quote unquote competitive application processes. There's,
well, it's a lot like building a business plan, right? You've got this theory on how you want your business to grow. But the reality is where you start day one, from where your business is, where you start, to where it is 5 years later, it's usually to the far right or to the far left of where you thought it would be. Now you're going to find some successes on the way, and hopefully you hit a big one 5-10 years in, but it's not always guaranteed. So this feeling of, well, being lost and now what do we do next? It's great to hear you guys were like, you know what, we're gonna fight for this. Now we're gonna go to the appeal. And then, ultimately you decided to pivot and move directions a little bit. So where does that put you now? You'd said you were talking about setting up and helping some other people that have licenses. So you can kind of figure out, still working in the system, but how can we partner up and help these guys succeed against the big guys?
Right. And that's kind of where we're at now, trying to finalize some of those relationships in the state of Missouri and beyond. We actually worked with also 2 women who applied as social equity applicants in Illinois. We helped them write their own application. They own 100% of the entity. And, we'll see where they kind of wind up. I have no idea when Illinois is going to announce anything, but, we want to help as many people as we can, be successful entrepreneurs and, have a place in the cannabis industry and not just have be dominated by the larger players. Because I think, in reality, especially in kind of some more conservative states like Missouri, people want to know who they're buying their products from or who's coming to operate in their communities. We applied in one city, and we were the only people that approached the city council or the mayor saying, hey, we're doing this. We want to come operate here. Can we get your support? Do you have any questions? We're still engaging with them because, no one else that has a license in that city is doing it at this point. I just feel like that's not the right way to go about it, especially if we're trying to build, a new industry and help legitimize it and get people on board and, excited.
What kind of feedback are you getting from the city and the cities that you've been talking to?
So, they're happy someone's reaching out to them. They just don't know who's coming to operate in their cities. And I said,
so they're pretty confused then, right?
Yeah. And I think they just want to, it's not like they're against it. It's just, if you have a new business starting in your community, you would think someone would reach out to, the Chamber of Commerce or anyone and say, hey, here's what's going on, especially when it's, something as public and as, I'd say, front and center as a cannabis program. There's a lot of people that, are not for cannabis. So I think a lot of people in the cities just want to have, conversations about what's going on and who's coming to operate in their town. Like I said, a large portion of the population won't be consumers, but you still have to be a member of that business community and that community in general. So how are you, going to interact with everyone there? And that starts with having, first making an introduction of who you are.
I think it can be pretty intimidating for those people that I know that have never done things always on the up and up in the cannabis world, right? And do you have a couple places where you would start when you start to interject yourself into a city or community and saying, this is a good starting point?
Yeah, so what we actually looked for with our applications was, okay, who are people that live in those cities that we want to apply outside of St. Louis where we are. And, let's go talk to them, get the kind of lay of the land and figure out, how we can best serve that part of the community. So, whether it's an underserved area or just, a more conservative city, how do we need to go and approach things to make sure that, we're doing things respectfully and not trying to step on people's toes or, alienate ourselves or the program before we even begin. So that's kind of the approach we took was if we're not if we're applying in a city outside of where we live, we want to have someone local there that knows what's going on. It really can be a champion, kind of a liaison and a partner to help, make that connection to that community. And that's ultimately why, we kind of like this, more licensing or franchising type model long term is, we want people in those communities running the businesses that know what's best for the people in their communities. I don't know what's best for someone in Chicago. I don't know what's best for someone in, Denver. But if we have people on the ground that know, that can help make a more impactful difference when it comes to helping the community and, really resonating with the consumer.
So when you are working with some of these companies, what kind of services are you able to provide as Feel State to help them create a successful business?
So, we can really provide pretty much anything they need help with, from, starting with the application. Obviously people may question our ability to do an application, but I think if they read what we wrote, they'd probably be like, well, that actually makes a lot of sense. So really from application to getting the doors open and ongoing. So, helping with construction, build out, training, hiring, all the SOPs, manuals, the marketing, the branding, really whatever someone would want assistance with. We have someone, either myself or my partner or, someone else on our team that we can reach out to and make sure it's done the right way. So ultimately, we want our success to be driven by how many other successful businesses we create. So we're all
how many people are on your team right now?
So full time, it's just myself and one other. We have some independent contractors that we can kind of pull as needed. And then ultimately, if we grow this big enough, then we'll obviously expand our full time team. But we like, maybe it's a different thing with the younger generation, but I think people like some flexibility. So to the extent we can, just have people off on an independent contract basis and, allow them to go do whatever really they want, as long as, they're helping us out in a way that makes sense.
David, do you have a part-time job on top of your full-time job here?
Besides being a parent to a newborn, no. And a 3-year-old, no. So we're at this full time, and we're dedicated. I think that's another thing we've seen is there are a lot of part-time cannabis business owners, and that makes it a little tough. It's not like a traditional. It's not like a real estate investment where you can kind of set it and more or less forget it. This takes a lot of hands-on activity to really grow it, nurture it, and making sure that it's going to be successful.
What are some of the people that you've met along the way that have really provided help to you and Feel State?
So the main person we work with and who helps us out is a girl named Emma Chasen. She's out of Portland, Oregon. She's probably the smartest person we've come across when it comes to cannabis science and just understanding, a different perspective on how to treat the plant and to interact with patients and customers. Her and her business partner, Matt Taylor, are by far, the most important people that, are helping us consistently, just helping to craft our message and our manuals and things along those lines. But then also it's, there's so many people that we've interacted with. Another great person that I don't even know how my partner got hooked up with her is Ross McCarthy from Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Somehow he interacted with her, and we've been trying to do what we can to help her and her organization. We've presented a couple of their boot camps. Just trying to find good people and help any way we can. Just kind of creating a network of individuals that can all work towards creating a better cannabis industry and just society in general. That's what we're going towards. So there's just I could talk for days about the people on our team. Maybe they don't want me to mention their names. I don't know if people I just mentioned want their names mentioned. I don't know, but it's finding the good people is somewhat tough, I would say. But once you do find them, you just got to keep doing what you can to make sure that you're creating a relationship that's as mutually beneficial as possible, and just try to help as many people as we can.
Well, I think the hard part about it is, at least from my perspective, is the fact that it's not only one of the biggest industries that's thriving right now. It attracts so many different walks of life, right? Because a lot of it is the money aspect. I mean, it really is. Yeah, I know that you guys try to focus on your patients, which is awesome. And I know that's kind of our stance when we were building our medical marijuana business. And it's really easy to get lost in the shuffle. Unfortunately, dealing with regulations that are changing constantly, you can tend to get into this constant reaction mode, because especially in new states, they could be changing weekly.
Right.
And I've talked about this several times. I mean, there are stuff that will change that will eliminate businesses. And if you're not up in the now, I mean, do you guys have some association groups that you're tied into right now?
Yeah, so the main one in Missouri is MoCan Trade. So I mean, we've helped them out with providing some information, and we're a member of their organization. But yeah, I mean, it's tough in these new states where a lot of the rules and the regulations are just really kind of unknown. There's no precedent on how they'll be enforced, or what the true intent is. It's kind of everyone's learning as you go, and it's people kind of like to criticize to a degree, the government entities that are running these programs. Maybe some of it is deserved, but it's also, you have to remember, they're starting a brand new program from scratch. It's, even if states before have done it, it's still very unique to each state based on the laws and the regulations that have to be followed. So it's not, a seamless transition I think most people kind of expect. But
there's no manual that has been written for this.
Right. It'd be the same with any kind of new industry or new government entity. I mean, there are going to be missteps. That's just how it is. It's a brand new, it's a startup industry.
So one thing I want to point out that you just came across that I think is very valuable for people to understand is that people, the regulators, it's the first time for them too. So going back to the beginning of our discussion, when you have those relationships that you're going through as you're working out different agreements on how regulations should be played between the business and the government in place, it's pretty vital to have those relationships now that you've cultivated over the last 12, 24 months. Now, all of a sudden, if you have an issue, that you can go and talk to these people, and they go, well, sure, David, we know you. You came to us at the beginning, and it provides that transparency that I think is non-existent when you don't go out of your way to make yourself known.
Yeah.
And, I've seen happen a ton of times around Colorado is the gentlemen, such as yourselves that put themselves out there. All of a sudden, a couple of years later, they come back and they go, let's talk to David. That guy, they've been doing some stuff. And all of a sudden, you can kind of become this conduit from the regulator side to the licensee side. And for those of you out there that are in this transition, the amount of power it almost gives somebody like you is incredible. Because you've got the ear of the regulators, and they're like, oh yeah, this guy he's straight up. He's been doing a lot of stuff, and they just keep hearing your name. And all of a sudden they start bringing you in for discussions. They probably haven't happened yet, but keep your ears open for that, because this is what you start seeing happening when they start opening up to the business owners. Because you're talking about, from what I see, I mean, we talked about a franchise type system. You're going to have a lot of different business owners that you're going to be talking to all the time. Have you thought about, you probably haven't thought about it, but I'll ask you this anyway. Have you thought about what you can do as a collective?
So, yeah, I mean, we've thought about that. Obviously, it's right now, it's difficult to kind of create that collective.
Yeah, a goal, right? What about a goal, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a little, going across state lines, you can't really do too much of a collective activity. Obviously something in, our whole big thing is, trying to help these small business owners by generating economies of scale where we can. So, the easiest aspects to kind of do that are more the ancillary service sides, like technology, the branding, the marketing, the training, things along those lines, the small costs that do add up. And then we're all about, if there's, people have products they want to buy from certain cultivators or manufacturers, go ahead and support those cultivators and manufacturers. Like we would, hope they're producing good quality product. And obviously the patients will determine that. But we want to give people the flexibility to operate this business themselves and really just, provide them with the back end niche value add that, will add up over time. And this is maybe a whole nother different discussion, but the one thing we haven't talked about is my partner used to run a online ordering and delivery platform similar to like Uber Eats and Grubhub, and that's his real passion is home delivery from dispensaries to the consumers.
Okay. So that's another niche you guys have there. Have you guys talked? So when you're talking about economies of scale and trying to make it more reasonable for these guys, have you guys talked to executive type? We'll say counsel. Are you guys working on stuff like that for attorneys, CPAs?
And that's our biggest expense. And we've seen the problems that a lot of cannabis companies face on the front end of not having the appropriate legal representation or accounting procedures in place. And that was something from the very beginning. I'm like, we're not going down this path. So, we have the first thing I did, when we were going at this is like, okay, we got to find a bank that will work with us if we get a license. So we got that. Then, is having the CPA firm on board, making sure they're reviewing our financial statements on a quarterly basis, having a good cannabis attorney, and then also having a really good franchise attorney as well. So, I mean, that's our keeping that infrastructure. That's what we really wanted to set as the foundation to allow us to kind of go out and maneuver around is, knowing we set things up as best we could, and trying to protect ourselves where we can, and making sure we're if we do get audited, our books are very clean, and people are going to be able to see all the documentation and where things are going, and keeping it as open as we can.
For those of the listeners out there that are starting a business or in the middle of it and they're trying to figure out licensing, how much can they expect to spend with an attorney as they go through this process of, let's say, 12 to 24 months?
You go through the appeal process, that raises it quite a bit. But, I would say, and also, obviously the application fees differ, but
of course,
I'd probably say it's unfortunately, you probably got to set aside, $50,000 to $100,000. Now, what I'll counter that is what Illinois was really good in with their social equity program is they cut their fees in half to $3,000. And there was some companies that were offering, kind of dispensary application templates for a reasonable price. And we were able to come in and, add our, special, our information to it for free. So, I mean, the people we apply with in Illinois spent nowhere near that amount of money. But, I'd say under a normal circumstance, you're probably looking 50 to 100,000, depending on who you get to write your application or if you're doing it yourself, and just kind of.
Yeah, it can become pretty overwhelming, especially if you're by yourself. You're like, where the hell am I going to come up with $100,000? I haven't even opened my doors yet.
No, it's tough. I mean, we have some outside investors, and we've put a lot of capital in ourselves, and it's tough. It's a huge risk, but we're committed to seeing this through to the end and keep going. And I think where we're able to kind of save a lot of money, and hopefully we can save money for others in the long term as well, is that we can do a lot of the business side things ourselves. So like my background and my partner's background we're both graduated with Masters of Accountancy. So even though we have a CPA firm reviewing our financials, I don't need to hire someone to go and do our accounting. We can do it ourselves. A lot of the operations and kind of like the strategic planning and how to train and hire, kind of setting up that template. We can kind of do it ourselves. Obviously, we need some help on the outside, but it's a lot that I think we can offer to people to help them out and try and keep costs down.
Yeah, I think that I didn't realize. I mean, we had some pretty good CPAs and accountants along the way, but had I realized in the end how valuable they really are for the end. When I say the payout, it's night and day. And if you're just going to go with a bookkeeper that is, used to normal business, I mean, what are your odds of success if you don't invest in that?
Right. And we have a tax person that likes to question every single expense and is like, prove to me why you can deduct this under 280E. So it's challenging, but that's ultimately what you need to do. Because you don't want to get stuck in, if you get audited, and a lot of cannabis companies get audited, you don't want to, have to spend money on the back end. Why not do it right the first time?
Yeah, we were at an event with the city of Denver several years ago, and they told us that 100% of us were going to be audited. They straight up said that to us, and it totally blew my mind. I was like, what? They said, yeah, it's coming. And one of the main reasons is they're trying to learn like we are. So the only way they can learn is get into the business. So whether or not you're doing anything that's incorrect in accounting, they're going to do it anyhow. So you might as well just have your ducks in a row and just expect it. I learned a long time ago that reactionary times they can be devastating to your business, and they can also be extremely stressful. So finding that out sooner than later is much easier on you mentally as you grow and move forward.
And I've been a part of a lot of businesses that are very, very reactionary, and that's kind of the trend. I want to buck is how do you be more proactive and be able to handle the downturns that are coming. So we had some long list of contingencies in place in the event we didn't win a license, and now we're working our way through that list. So it's like, how do you plan for the worst case scenario? And if the best case happens, great. You're better off for it.
Yeah, it's really easy to get into cannabis going, you know what? All I do is have to grow this amount of plants and we'll profit. And a lot of people forget about all the in-between here. And there's so much so it takes a lot more to be successful than just growing a few plants here or there and selling it to the end user. And I think that gentlemen like yourselves and so many others that are in the industry realize that, and they develop processes like SOPs and all these things. I had to learn along the way. But making people aware of these, I mean, if you really have a franchise system where you have layers upon layers of everything that needs to happen in these companies, heck yeah, they're going to be more successful. That if you're learning from some stuff that truly works, it's not, cannabis is not, just because it's a cannabis business, it doesn't make it that much different from any other business. So you got to implement these things that other industries use, right? So, I love the fact that you guys are like, all right, well, we've already got our plan B and we're utilizing it now. As your future goes along, as you grow, I mean, what's the ultimate for Field State? Where do you see yourself in the next 2 to 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, we've never envisioned ourselves as being, our goal's never been to be the biggest cannabis company. We want to grow smartly and strategically and really provide as much value as we can to the people that we work with. So if it's a more limited number, and they're doing well, that's great. And maybe that will lead to more opportunity. But at the end of the day, it's it's hard to know where we ultimately see this going. Is it us operating this forever? Maybe. Is it ultimately selling, the company to someone else? Maybe. I don't know. So, our focus right now is over the next, 3 years, let's go and grow this company in the best way we can that generates the most amount of value to the people we work with, the consumers, the communities. And then we'll reassess at the end of that 3-year period and be able to, in a good position to kind of take some strategic direction one way or the other.
Okay, sounds good. Well, David, I want to give people an opportunity, if they're interested in talking to you more about, hey, how can we create a partnership or a franchise with you guys, and also just learning about more of the systems you have in place, because I know there's a heck of a lot of detail that there's no way we could have covered in this episode. But if people want to reach out to you guys on what's the best way to do so?
So, you can email me. My email is David, David, at myfeelstate.com, myfeelstate. You can find us on LinkedIn, just at Feelstate, or Instagram, or Facebook. Right now I run all 3 of those platforms. So if you send a message, I'll get it. And then, to connect with me on LinkedIn. Those are the best ways. We're always happy to talk to people about what we're trying to accomplish and who we are and kind of our background, and just give advice and just have conversations. It's
cool.
Our big thing is trying to help educate businesses and the consumers and the public. That's kind of what we're doing now through our social media platforms. So, the more people we can reach out to, even if it's just one person at a time, that's a value to us,
I want to point out something else real quick before we end this. There are some interesting stuff happening. You brought up social equity before, and I've been working with Chris Nanny quite a bit on the stuff he's been working on. And fortunately, that's kind of how we met. So I appreciate that. But David's been following and working with Chris quite a bit for how long have you guys known each other now?
It seems like a long time, but in reality, it's probably only a few months. I saw a post of his on LinkedIn, reached out, and we've had some good conversations. And
very cool. Well, when you start getting in the social and you start talking and seeing all the posts constantly, it feels like, oh man, we've known each other for a year.
Right.
It's only been a few months. I'm kind of actually in the same boat with Chris. But what I do notice is that the tools that he's created and the book that he's written, they've created a sense of awareness, what is for people out there that can consider themselves social equity licensees and applicants. And so my challenge is for anybody listening out there that knows somebody that is, it's hard to explain it exactly right now. If you go back and listen to a couple of my episodes with Chris Nanny, you'll get more on it. But David understands enough that he knows some of the shortcuts through the system. And this is huge, especially getting reduced licenses, finding the states that have these programs in place or are building these programs are huge. So I urge you to reach out to David and ask him, or Chris Nanny as well, because I know he's got application experience too. So both of these individuals should be able to help you through this and also see a lot of the big opportunity that I think over the next 5 years is going to explode these licensing programs because of it. So please feel free also to reach out to me at plantproblem.com. You can find any of my episodes there. And David, thank you so much for being on today. I hope, I wish you success in moving forward and working and helping these smaller guys get up, because I know it's a lot of work. And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure, and glad to come on and talk about us for a little while, and hopefully we'll do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've just listened to another insightful episode of Plant Problems. If you like what you heard so far, don't forget to tell your friends and colleagues. For additional resources or to leave a review, head over to plantproblem.com. Join us again next week on Plant Problems with Tony Frischknecht. We look forward to having conversations with you as we go along this journey.